I once had a conversation with my roommate about reading. He said that reading the news is far more important than reading books. And of course, I couldn't agree because it was only thanks to books that I managed to improve my life. So I said, well, that's debatable. Big mistake. He immediately attacked me, told me how idiotic my opinion was, and how I should never let anyone hear such a ridiculous statement. And then he made this comparison. He said that knowing what's going on in the world and around you is obviously more useful than reading some crappy mystery or romance novel. To which I said, well, that's not exactly a fair comparison. I mean, news are obviously important, but it's not like they are always high quality. So you could also say that reading good books is more useful than reading and putting all sorts of unimportant news inside your brain. You think we could just laugh it off, or at least agree to disagree? No. He attacked me again, said my example didn't make any sense, and how could I even come up with such a stupid comparison? And then he ended it his usual way by saying something like, it's pointless to talk to you, you can't be reasoned with, you can't stand being told you're wrong, you are always looking for a fight. Hi, I'm Paolo. On this channel, I talk about building confidence, overcoming self sabotage, and making progress on what actually matters to you. Now, that argument about reading wasn't just one bad conversation. It was the same pattern for every disagreement we ever had, no matter how small. And now I can see that I stayed in that friendship and tried to salvage it for far too long. But at least it taught me something important about what happens when someone always needs to be right, and especially what it does to the people around them, including themselves. The thing about people who always need to be right is that every disagreement with them becomes a battle they have to win. So it's not about coming to an understanding or exploring different perspectives. It's just about winning. And over time, the people around them learn to just stop trying. They stop sharing their opinions because what's the point? They are going to get bulldozed anyway. So they start walking on eggshells, choosing their words carefully. With my roommate, it got so bad that I eventually just stopped engaging at all. I would bite my tongue and avoid expressing any opinion, even if it was about whether or not I liked a movie or a song, just to be safe and to avoid making him angry by accident. And the funny thing about someone who always needs to be right is that when others start reacting to them the same way I did, they think that people are finally starting to properly respect their opinions. In reality, it's not about respect. It's just that dealing with someone who treats every conversation like a war they have to win is exhausting. And that's just the damage to relationships. But it gets worse. Because here's what happens when you always need to be right. You stop learning and you stop growing. Think about it. If you're convinced that you are always right, what's there to improve? Why would you ever try to change your approach and try something new, right? Because of this, you naturally avoid anything that might expose your weaknesses. So constructive feedback start to feel like personal attacks, so you ignore it. And trying something unfamiliar? Absolutely not, because you might look stupid at first. So you end up only doing what's safe and familiar. And while you're busy protecting your ego and staying in your comfort zone, everyone else is moving forward. They are learning, they are growing, they are making mistakes and getting better, while you're there thinking you're superior when in reality you're just standing still. Which brings me to the worst part about wanting to be right at all costs. Even if you win every argument, even if you never admit you're wrong, even if you maintain this perfect image of always being right, you're not happy. Your relationships are exhausting because you're always on guard, always ready to defend yourself. You can't experience real connection because every conversation feels like a potential threat. And sure, you win arguments, but you lose people in the process. And deep down, you know it. You can feel how tiring everything has become. But admitting that would be the same as admitting you're wrong about your entire approach to life. So you keep going, you keep doubling down, and you keep blaming everyone else for being too weak, too sensitive, and too dumb. And the sad part is that all of this comes from fear. Because that's what this is all about. People become like this because they are terrified that being wrong means there's something wrong with them. To them, wrong doesn't just mean that what they said, that their idea was incorrect. It means that they are fundamentally stupid, not good enough, and that they are a failure. So every disagreement feels like an attack on their value as a person, which is why they tend to be defensive and why they usually attack first and don't relent until their opponent is completely destroyed. Because taking a step back, even if it's for the good of the relationship, feels like an insult. And I get it. Maybe they grew up in a family where mistakes were shameful, where being wrong was the same as being weak. Or maybe society convinced them that their worth is entirely tied to how much they can achieve and on being successful at everything. But as we can see, trying to protect yourself this way doesn't work. It makes everything worse. Your relationships fall apart, your growth stops, and your life becomes miserable. So, what can you do about all this? If you see even a little bit of yourself in this, treat this video as a friendly wake up call. And I want you to understand this. Being wrong doesn't mean you're worthless, and making mistakes doesn't mean you're stupid. In fact, being able to admit when you're wrong, it's a sign of strength. It means you're secure enough that you can be honest and confident enough that you can learn from your mistakes. Because real growth isn't about being right all the time anyway. It's about being less wrong next time. So let yourself be wrong sometimes. Let yourself make mistakes and learn from them. That's how you can get better and be actually right more often. Now, if you're on the other side of this, if you are constantly dealing with someone who always needs to be right and is also aggressive about it, please understand this. It's not about you. You can't fix them. You can't argue them into self awareness, and you can't convince them to change unless they want to. And staying in that relationship, hoping that they'll eventually see what they're doing, I did that for years. It doesn't work. And I know you might feel a little guilty about leaving or cutting things off, but you're not abandoning them so much as you're protecting yourself. You're recognizing that you deserve a relationship where you don't have to walk on eggshells constantly, where you can share your thoughts without the risk of being attacked, where disagreements don't have to turn into battles. Don't make my mistake. Don't stay too long. At the very least, in case distancing yourself isn't as simple as leaving a roommate, make sure you don't let them convince you that you are the problem. Thank you for watching. And if you're interested in building the confidence to not just pursue your goals, but also to protect yourself in relationships, check out my free complete guide on how to build confidence even if you're starting from zero. I'll leave the link in the description and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.